Hey everybody. I figured it'd be best to commentate this one. I'm not used to being in front of the camera, so I'm feeling pretty awkward, but I'm going to give it a shot. So, this thing here, or something like it, I'm pretty sure is the culprit. This was the first generation of this particular brand, and it came out in 2013. They were originally intended to let you use a different controller on a different system, but they also had the ability to run programmed functions or aiming scripts. You can see here it has rapid fire, quick on off, quick scope, auto aim, aim assist. So I'm pretty sure that the aimbots used to make the old montages were precursors to this type of device, running aimbot scripts in between the controller and the console. This software can easily be contained on something as small as a chip, and it was being soldered into controllers and used at the MLG tournaments. Based on the small amount of gameplay that I have reviewed, I believe it will be shown that at least half of the 2010 MLG roster was cheating at the tournaments in this manner. So, a brief disclaimer, I haven't actually reviewed any 360 gameplay in a long time, so I've been looking at MCC streamers for a while, and so I'm not quite calibrated. I don't have this stuff written down. It's not really simple. It's kind of just like I'm miscalibrated as far as what do I remember is normal or not for the 360 versus MCC, because it's a lot different and there's a lot of gray area. So I'm not going to stand by any single clip as 100% evidence right now, and I may revise these videos later as I go back and watch my old gameplay again, watch legit gameplay again, etc. When it comes to the 360, I actually thought the aimbot would be more difficult to spot on current gen, but I actually think it's easier. On the 360, the evidence is a little more circumstantial. There's a lot of things that are suspicious in 360 gameplay. Suspicious as in can be caused by an aimbot. A lot of those things also happen normally, but it becomes suspicious once they happen too often, or the way in which they happen. So, for example, there may be a suspicious movement that does occur in normal gameplay, but it occurs every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, once. And once that's happening constantly, it just kind of adds up as evidence. The aiming on the 360 could get really wonky, but it tended to be wonkiness on a larger scale than on MCC. A lot of the smaller scale twitching reticle type stuff that we're going to see here, people who only play on MCC and only watch Twitch cheaters are going to think it's more normal than it is, because that stuff is actually fairly common on MCC, but those movements are much less frequent in 360 gameplay. 360 gameplay is much rougher around the edges, but in some ways it's kind of smoother because of that, and that will make sense later, probably once we go back to 2008 and see what people's aim is supposed to look like. Legit aim on the 360 involves lots of target acquisition with movements that are broken down into straight X movements followed by straight Y movements along the axes, rounded boxes, arcs, half circles, windmills. There's a wide range of pretty wonky looking stuff that's all normal. And just in general, the thumbsticks on the 360 were really bad. What 360 gameplay doesn't have a lot of is perfectly straight, laser accurate twitch movements. You can be spastic and out of control with your movements, and it will look really wonky. And that can be legit in 360 gameplay. You can be wonky and spastic, or you can be accurate. You can't really be both at the same time. The 360 BR can look pretty sticky and weird. Even the best players, it was common for them to shoot, adjust their aim, shoot, adjust their aim, sort of in a non-continuous way. So I think that's everything up front. I'm going back over these clips for the first time here, so we're going to be going through these together. Okay. First up, don't shoot the messenger. First up, we've got Roy. So, in this clip, you're going to see his aim move back and forth across the target in a really consistent way without really interacting with the aim assistance. And then you're going to see some twitchiness and some wonkiness after that. So here, the first guy is going back and forth across the guy. Okay, I'm actually just messing with you. This clip is normal. This clip is within normal tolerances. Completely normal. Okay, just to be clear, the previous clip of Roy was not sarcasm. That actually is within normal tolerances, or what I consider to be normal tolerances. This clip is pretty suspicious in my opinion. So I talk about this in my very first video, or I showed this in my very first video, Roadblock Impossible Snipe, where I showed that there was a snipe in one of Roadblock's montages that should not have landed. And somebody pointed out that his sniper went down by 2 bullets, and it was actually 2 different clips stitched together to make it look like a shot that connected. So, and what gave it away was that he made a motion with the sniper towards the player, but the reticle never got to the player. And in Halo 3, if you spend a lot of time in the theater or watching footage, the reticle has to touch the player model, or it has to pass through the player model in order for the snipe to land. This includes this shot. So if we go frame by frame, he goes sideways and then shoots. This is okay because I don't understand how this works very well, but it has to either touch the player model or it has to pass through the player model such that the game is going to interpolate between the 2 points and say, okay, yeah, that hit him. So, but then the recoil is not captured until this frame. So basically, between this frame, his aim goes from here to here and then up on the recoil. And he's also jumping, which makes this clip hard to say if it's 100% weird or not, etc. So he's kind of at the end of his jump. So this part's fine. This can connect, but it's still weird in my opinion because from here, so he's not really inputting anything, and then he's going a straight line left for one frame and then down diagonally to the connection. I'm also not sure exactly how that registration graphic works. It's usually pretty accurate online, surprisingly so. So I would imagine on LAN it's pretty accurate as far as where the shot actually connected, but I don't actually know for sure. But I would imagine it's pretty close. So I find this one suspicious because it's one frame straight left, and then it's one frame down to the head from there to there. But his recoil gets pretty high. So it's a small, fast movement, which requires you to press the thumbstick a certain distance, but his recoil still gets that high, which means it was just a very short movement, because otherwise his reticle wouldn't move that high because he'd still be moving it down after the shot. So for this movement to not be captured by any of the frames and have his recoil still end up that high, I think is pretty suspicious. This one is pretty bad. Obviously, you can see how sharp this movement is. And it resolves back to the player. So in Halo, obviously when your target dies or moves behind a wall, sometimes your aim can get pretty wild because you're losing the aim assistance. And some of that's normal. Sometimes it's not normal. So in MCC, it's actually pretty common for there to be pretty strange looking releases when a target dies, or especially when a target dies, but also when they go behind a wall. Sometimes that can happen, but usually it's a pretty good aimbot indicator because of just how out of control they are. Like, if in the situation they really shouldn't be inputting very much on the thumbstick, or you can see that they're not, and then all of a sudden their aim goes haywire because, and this is usually why, because the part of the body that the aimbot is targeting goes behind an obstacle. So you can see, like, he's going almost purely vertically up to this player, probably even grabbing aim assistance right here, and then, but the final shot location is behind the wall, and now all of a sudden his aim's swinging off to the left. And then, so like, he's going pretty much straight up, getting aim assistance, and then just snaps to the left and then right back. Ridiculous. This is a very weird clip. There's no dropped frames in this. The gameplay is at 30 frames per second, and I captured it at 60 frames per second. So basically, if I press the step forward button twice, the game should go forward one frame. So if I try to step forward if I press the button 4 times and the game doesn't update what's on the screen, then I know there was frame drop. Not that complicated, but people use it as an excuse for suspicious aiming movements in MCC a lot. And that is often true because on PC, if you're running the game at really high frames and you drop a few frames, it can make your aim do really wonky things, but it won't really be obvious because the game will still appear to be running smoothly. When the game was running at 30 frames per second, if you drop even 1 frame or there's a theater glitch, it's usually pretty obvious because everything on the screen will skip around. We are going to see a couple clips later that do have frame drop in them, so we'll be talking about this a little more then. But for now, this is just to say that there is no frame drop in this clip. Is that like 15 sensitivity? So yeah, obviously the quickness and acceleration on that movement is really weird. This is probably an aimbot, but it's almost so weird that I'm not comfortable just saying that because I'm not sure that I've ever seen one quite like that before. So I'm sure there are lots of wonkiness and glitches in legit 360 gameplay that I haven't seen before. So I wouldn't just see this one clip and say this guy is cheating. But this is really weird. If I had to guess, I would say this probably happens because of the rocket coming out. Right before, so there's his reticle right there. So right before this happens, or right after it happens, a couple frames later, the rocket comes out in pretty much that same spot. So this could be the aimbot trying to avoid shooting the rocket, maybe. Either way, it's a suspicious clip. Okay. I'm pretty comfortable saying that this guy was cheating. So I'll just go over here to probable. I should have been doing this the entire time, I guess. But I've been amusing myself by giving these people more fitting names. So for probable, I'm pretty sure about Soldier 187. So for right now, well, I guess we should just do this. So, well, actually, none of the clips, like, the clips are bad so far, but, like, this one was normal. This one, I think, is pretty suspicious, but I'm not 100% sure yet. This one is really bad. So this one we'll put down as probable because he was moving in a straight line up, basically, caught auto aim, and then swung off. So yeah, this one was pretty bad. So for probable, we'll put down trashes. This one was pretty bad. So we'll put down Z Blightmare. And then this guy I'm pretty sure about. So we'll also put down Solder 187. I was pretty proud of that one. Okay, let's see what Solder 187 is up to. So this is going to look really familiar to people who have been watching my channel. So yeah, this first movement is just pretty weird, where he goes up. See this up movement during his first shot. How it's just kind of an even speed. Goes up, down. Up, down at an even speed. And then this snap directly to where players are at behind cover. This is really common with the aimbot, and it's pretty obvious in my opinion, because it usually, their aim goes there and then it snaps back close to, it doesn't just go there and shoot and happen to be like exactly where that person is, which isn't easy to do on the 360 with no aim assistance. But there's a snap back to the reticle's previous position before they fire. Usually, like, obviously this is going to happen. Obviously this is going to happen a lot in normal gameplay. But usually what someone will do when someone goes behind cover, even if they kind of shoot where they're at, in this case it's different because he's turning, he's going to go do something else. But usually what a person will do is one of two things. They'll leave the reticle in the middle, in this case in the middle of the pillar, waiting to give themselves the best chance of shooting at either side once they see which way they're going to go. So they'll leave it in the middle, or they'll guess which side the person's going to come out and aim at the opening on the side of it, right? So, but what the aimbot frequently does is just snaps to where that person is, even though that's pretty hard to do. Or in a lot of cases, somebody wouldn't even try to do it because they just know the person's in cover. Some of that stuff obviously doesn't apply when you're playing in a high stress tournament situation and you're just, you know, snapping off every shot that, you know, that's possible. But still, it's really common. It snaps to where, exactly where that player is, and then it rebounds basically to where the reticle was prior to the firing movement. And that's really weird because usually people make that movement and then it takes them a second to even say like, okay, I missed. Okay, that didn't hit the guy. Like, what am I doing next? They don't. And usually what they do next is they're going to aim at the middle of the cover, or they're going to aim at one side. So it's normal stuff, but sometimes it's not normal. And once you start talking about a 10-second clip that has 3 or 4 things in it that the aimbot does, that's when you start getting pretty suspicious. So you have this weird vertical movement at an odd speed, and he fires. So he does this weird movement and fires, but doesn't adjust his aim to the left, even though it's obvious that he's missing by a mile until he's done doing that. Then he snaps right to where the guy is. And then down here, yeah, down here at the end is also suspect. Because this is another thing that's really common, is really sharp up and down chopping. Sometimes it's pulsing, which the vertical pulsing we'll talk about later. Sometimes on MCC it's legit. On the 360, people are not going to be repeatedly pulsing towards the head while they're shooting somebody because the thumbsticks just weren't sensitive enough for that to be a good idea. So yeah, then, so the rest of what's suspicious here is on this last shot. Or this last guy. So, yeah, you can just see how sharp and choppy this vertical is. It goes up and down. Goes up and down, and then when it finds the guy, it also stutters. And there's just kind of a stutter and sharpness to it that eventually you'll just kind of be able to tell that that's not really what this should look like. Like, if it was just that alone, I would probably say, like, yeah, that's not that bad. But it's when you take everything in this clip together, it starts to add up, you know? And so maybe I said this before, but with MCC, when your target dies or goes behind a wall, sometimes your aim will get a little wild. Or it won't get wild, but it will do like pretty odd little releases that look pretty strange, but are normal on MCC. But those are much less common on the 360, and usually, like, yes, you're going to do wild things when you lose the aim assistance if you're inputting things, but if you're not inputting things, like, not much should actually happen. And because if you think about it, like, if your aim did weird things every time your target died or went behind a wall, it would actually feel pretty bad to play the game, right? So as long as you're not inputting much while someone dies or goes behind a wall, your aim really shouldn't change that much. And this is just this vertical chop here. I mean, you're going to see this a lot. This vertical chop and then the chop sideways at the player combined with how it releases as he rounds the corner there is pretty unusual. But once again, probably if it was this one thing, I would never say this is an aimbot. So that's why this stuff, especially on the 360, gets pretty tricky, because the aim was pretty wonky and it ran like shit. I don't know how they captured this. I don't know how the streams worked, you know, how it was produced or whatever. So there could be different things like that going on. But once you have these different things that you're going to see are aimbot signatures, and you have several of them happening in 10 seconds, it adds up. So, more from Solder187. I haven't gone back and looked at this again, so it might take me a second to figure out exactly everything that's going on. So yeah, this is just another instance of the person he's targeting goes behind an obstacle, and the aimbot just goes crazy. That was just the software. Sometimes it runs slow. So yeah, he's basically starting to track this player, and his aim, he's jumping and his aim is moving up. He's basically tracking him, and then all of a sudden his aim swings way off. Right? Pretty weird. Now, if we look at this slowly, you'll see. Okay. So here, pretty much on the guy, tracking the guy. And his aim is going to go crazy as soon as he goes behind this. Still tracking. There's his reticle right there. Still tracking him up the cannon. Now the guy's body goes behind the little you know, trust or whatever this is. So tracking goes behind the obstacle. Now his aim is over here. As soon as that happens. So he's tracking him up. Is it really reasonable to say that he was tracking him up the cannon here with a movement that was going to go this far left as soon as he lost his aim assistance? Probably not. So that one's pretty bad. Yeah, so lunchbox. So I haven't gone back and reviewed these, so just because someone shows up in a suspicious clip, I'm not going to say definitively that they're cheating. And also, I used to really like MLG, so yeah, I don't like doing this stuff, you know? So let's take a look at this. So yeah, I think this clip is pretty bad. So this first one, like, a wild movement right as the target moves behind the edge of the walkway. And it's also a fast, bouncy movement. I haven't really thought much about like giving these things names or how to describe them, but it's a little bouncy. His aim kind of stutters around. So there's something about the quickness and the stutter that is suspicious. And once again, this one just so happens, like, okay, so here's, like, if he just moved his aim and like missed this, like even pretty badly, that would be normal, right? But he doesn't just like move his aim and miss badly. It stutters. It goes, there's an acceleration and then a stutter. It's not just, oh, I swung past this guy and missed because I was expecting aim assistance and didn't get any. Okay. So, and it just so happens, so like you can see, the movement he's making here is going to be a very small one. He just needs a small adjustment, and he's making a small adjustment up, and then he accelerates off to the side and bounces around. And then as these two guys jump, it's a little strange that he manages to hit that guy, but then ends up on this guy. Not really anything that's a problem, but a little bit weird. See, like he's clearly intending to target the second guy, but he does a little half circle and hits the first guy first. Not a big deal, but again, it's just sort of how these things start to add up sometimes. And then after that, you can see his aim is chopping up and down. His aim's chopping up and down. So 1, 2, 3. and then chops a third time behind the obstruction, right? Which is something that we're going to see a lot. So chop, chop, chop. And you can see that second chop is pretty sharp. Chop, chop, chop. And usually they're gonna move and shoot, and then they're gonna move and shoot, they're gonna move and shoot, but they're gonna be trying to follow the guy. They're not going to be chopping back and forth. So probably that clip's pretty bad, actually. Like, probably I would almost put him at probable, but we'll cut him a little slack for now. I don't quite remember what's in here, keeping in mind that, again, this is only from an hour and a half of the tournament, and that includes the talking in between games and stuff. So not even an hour and a half of this tournament is where all these videos came from. So I'm going to be at this for a while, and I'm not going to accuse anybody without really going back and assessing all of that person's clips and saying whether it's possible they were not using an aimbot. Because, yeah, the 360 was... weird stuff happens. But once we start looking at some 2008 gameplay, and hopefully some of that exists out there in better resolution than 360p, once we do some of that and you see what the aim is supposed to look like, this stuff starts to look pretty bad, trust me. Yeah, that one is pretty bad. So yeah, tracking the player. Yeah, that one's pretty bad. Because it's happening... that's a very sharp stutter back and forth, which... like, you could see this on MCC. If I saw this on MCC, I'd be like, you know, whatever. That stuff doesn't really happen on the 360. The thumbsticks were... the dead zones were massive. I mean, so like the first clip with Roy, where I was messing with you, like... I have a clip in another video from Roy where, like, the guy's, like, down here or something, he's gonna shoot him, and he draws, like, a perfect box. He goes, like, down perfectly, sideways perfectly, up perfectly, closes the box perfectly, and, like, misses. And it's all, like, perfectly straight lines, drawing a box. And I was gonna put that in there and say, like, look how ridiculous this is. But that's actually normal. So, yeah. So, the point being that thumbsticks really were not very sensitive. So, to get very sharp, that's why that one snipe from a really good noob is suspicious to me. Because to get that small vertical movement so quick that the frames don't pick it up, you probably have to move the thumbstick a certain amount. So the fact that it just moves that amount and then that input appears to stop based on where the recoil gets, that's what makes it suspicious. So you can have short movements, but as soon as they're fast, they kind of have to be the thumbstick pressed to a certain degree, and you can't really press the thumbstick so fast back and forth to get really sharp movements one direction and then another. You can get an effect that looks like that a lot on MCC. I don't really know why, just because the aim does weird shit in MCC, but on the 360 it really didn't very often. Sometimes it does, but this one is like, he's tracking the guy, and then, like, this isn't frame drop. It's before the guy goes around the corner, so it's just a really sharp stutter. So yeah, that's about it. I went back and watched this clip again, and I actually missed that he pre-tracks this player, which makes this clip even worse. You can see he makes a really small adjustment just as the player comes into view. So this is another one that's pretty bad. The first one I don't have much of a problem with. It's the second movement. So I call these kickouts when you get kicked out of scope. And just the movement and acceleration, like you can see in between these two kickouts, like his aim is pretty stable. Right there, right before the second kickout. And yeah, there's just something about the second kickout that I just think is too fast. The acceleration is just too much. It's too sharp, you know? Like, look at the first one. See how kind of smooth and natural the first one is? And then look how fast the first one accelerates. And once again, so this was probably a combined effect of his target moving behind the wall there. This happens pretty much right when his target moves behind the wall. And I'm pretty confident saying that, like, see, he's not really even inputting anything there, and then all of a sudden it's that much. So and not like these guys have to be playing perfectly or anything, but that's a small movement he needs to make there. So how, even with a kick out, how you go from that to that, I'm pretty confident saying is probably more to do with the guy moving behind a wall and his aimbot going crazy. This one is maybe not that bad. We're going to see this a lot too. And so this is probably more relevant for later. So you've seen this a lot on my channel if you watch my channel. And it's this, they have somebody to target, but they go off the opposite direction first and then aim back at the target. And the aimbot does this a lot to look more natural, I would assume. And it does it like when it doesn't make any sense, when they've had enough reaction time to know that they're going to be targeting this person who's off on the right, and yet their aim like cuts to the left and then goes back to the right for no reason. Like they don't know their left from their right. This one might not be an example of that because there's this body blowing up, so he may have been responding to that. You can see the body blowing up here. So this one is probably nothing. But we're going to see this a lot where someone comes around the corner and the guy's on the right, and yet they still go left first and then back to the target. This is actually normal if he's rounding the corner. So this is more just for later because the guy's flopping around here. This probably doesn't mean anything. But if his aim's over here, it's normal to go past the target and then to the target sharply and diagonally. This would be normal. It's when they're rounding the corner and they know this is the person they're going to target and their aim's over here, but they go this way first for no reason and then to the target. So yeah, this one is pretty bad. So this will be common too, where after the aimbot does something weird, there's a hesitation, like they should kind of be expecting what's going to happen and kind of know what they want to do with their aim next normally. And a lot of times there's this odd hesitation where they just don't input anything because they're just responding to what the aimbot's doing. And we'll see that a lot. So this one has a little bit of hesitation, but this is also just somebody going behind an obstacle and then his aiming inputs becoming strange. So his target's falling behind the dumpster and he's tracking him basically vertically down. Still going like, and then by this point he's going like completely vertically down. But then as soon as the part of the body that he's targeting goes behind the dumpster, now he's aiming to the left. And there's just something about the sharpness that happens at that's not natural. Like you can kind of tell that it's not an input that he put in because the guy went when the guy went behind the dumpster, it's just something that's happening to his aim because of how sharp it is and how just not in line it is with what he was doing. It's just completely out of line with what the inputs he would have been putting in there are. And it's right when the part of the body that he's targeting goes behind the dumpster that his aim just pops off to the left. The hesitation on this after that movement is not that bad. We're going to see a lot worse examples of that. That snap's not that terrible. That would be a pretty normal movement right here. But it does kind of go into the box pretty close to where Nightmare is going to be, or where he is. Actually, not quite so much, but it's still a little bit weird because I was going to say because it rebounds. His aim goes back to the pre-firing position, but doesn't really. That's actually pretty natural. Yeah, that movement's fine. So this is just more about how he's like clearly tracking the guy down, and then that part of the body goes behind the dumpster, and all of a sudden his aim pops. And it doesn't just pop, and then he's like, it pops, and then the movement after the pop is kind of wild too. Like, he's not, like, his aim's not there, and he's like, okay, I'm missing, like, what am I doing next? What's my next input gonna be? It goes from a pop to just, like, uncoordinated. Where if his aim's popping that much, what he's already doing should be the result of some uncoordinatedness on account of not having the aim assistance. So the fact that he has uncoordinated that just pops off that sharply to the left, but it's still a short movement that doesn't really go anywhere, but then all of a sudden he's kind of wild to the right, is weird. I think that's what makes this clip weird to me. So this one is not really that bad. I think that this grab is a little strong. That's really common in MCC. It's much less common on the 360. The way his aim grabs the guy at first is pretty strong. And then it's kind of how sharp. Yeah, this is probably a bad clip. So the guy goes behind the wall, which is fine. but it's the sharpness, the follow-up shot to the behind the wall location. There's always this sharpness to it, followed by a rebound effect. In this case, like, it's really sharply up, and then instead of like looking towards the flag like he wants to, there's the sharp movement down. Like, he's going really sharp up, and then actually not just stopping, but kind of going up and then down. Really sharp up into the box and then right back down. When really you would just go sharp up into the box, miss, and then you'd move your aim to the right from there. It's the way it just accelerates up to that spot and then back down. That's unnatural. So this one, again, this stuff is going to happen a lot, and it's kind of circumstantial, but these things are going to start to add up, I'm pretty sure. So he scores the flag, and then he appears, in my opinion, to track this player before the player rounds the corner. And then there's a possible extra shot at the end. Like, that guy was pretty obviously dead. That second shot is maybe a little sus. But yeah, so in slow motion, snaps to there, and then unzooms and starts moving. That's probably nothing. We'll ignore that one. The extra shot, nah. But yeah. This could easily just be normal. But we will see some of that. So here we have more from Solder187. I'm never going to get tired of that joke. This is pretty bad. So some of that back and forth stuff is pretty common, but that's pretty sharp, and it's when it's right on top of the target. This is actually pretty uncommon on the 360. If I saw this on MCC, this is again one of those things, if I saw this on MCC, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And yeah, it's again like, it's not just the choppiness back and forth. It's the fact that this choppiness is like a really good lead on this target each time. Like almost perfect. This one is another vertical chop when the player's behind an obstacle. It's just unusual that he chops that hard up and then down. This is, again, the type of thing that on MCC I wouldn't say is definitive evidence of anything, but on 360 this clip is really unusual. because if frames are dropping enough to make his aim look that wonky, it should be obvious by looking at everything else in the game. And everything else in the game is moving along more or less normally. And look how sharp and choppy this aim is. Especially those last few towards the head. That up down, this last up down, and then the side to side. Okay. So yeah, I started watching these beforehand, before I start recording, so I remember what's even in the clip. So after he kills this guy, I think it's Ghost Ayame. When Soldier turns here, his aim goes to Ghost Ayame, just randomly, right? Which again, if you go back and review a bunch of footage, like this kind of stuff is going to happen randomly, but it doesn't really happen that often. And I mean, you're turning and he just so happens to go exactly through that player. And then also, as his aim goes down to Zuwu, it's just kind of oddly going back and forth. That's something that's hugely aimbot indicative, is serpentine vertical motions or figure eights. Those I'm not sure I've ever seen in legit gameplay. When they look a certain way, when there's a really consistent speed vertical serpentine motion or figure eight pattern, that's almost always an aimbot. Those are more common on MCC because everything's smoother. You can really see it track back and forth, you know, like this. And people just don't do that with their thumb when they're looking up and down. So here, like maybe this is a little serpentine. But yeah, he turns. I mean, when you watch it in full speed, it looks like he gets aim assistance there, right? But I'm not even sure if he should have gotten that much anyways. Because he goes, when you look at him in slow-mo, he goes pretty far past him. Maybe. It's hard to tell. I know at least online on the 362, you could sometimes get aim assistance through obstacles when you shouldn't have. And sometimes that looks really weird, but it's just networking or something. So probably caught a slowdown. He would catch a slowdown here, but I still think, like, of course, that's also an opening. This is an opening, so he may have been stopping his aim there anyways, but he's also falling, so I guess that's normal. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, once again, these guys aren't perfect, so I'm not really sure why he looks off to the left here, but maybe he did. You know, it doesn't really mean anything. I still think it's weird how much he catches this player randomly. And then, I guess, it's hard to say it's serpentine. It kind of is, but that more applies to MCC just because the 360 is just kind of rougher. Like, I would more call this just kind of going back and forth while he's falling. It's not really a serpentine motion. But still kind of, he oddly catches that, and then his aim's going back and forth in a way that is kind of weird. So once again, like if I saw this last part, I wouldn't really think anything of it. But once you combine, you know, spinning around, once you combine looking at a different place on the map entirely, and you just so happen to basically send your aim through some player, once you combine that with this, it starts to add up. Yeah. So this clip is really bad. He appears to snap to this player through a wall and then track him perfectly. But it's not just about the tracking, it's also about how sharp the target acquisition movement is when he has no aim assistance, and that's really unusual. So yeah, that one should be pretty self-explanatory. So I forgot to mention this, but what makes this clip more suspicious is that Soldier, like, you can have lots of just lucky tracking movements because you're moving the same direction as your opponent. At this distance, maybe not, but if they were facing each other, if you're moving in the same direction as your opponent, your movement speed is the same, so you could track people easily, or it will look like you're tracking them through a wall when you're not really. But Soldier, so his opponent is running forward in a straight line, and he's kind of stepping forward and back and side to side on the ramp. Like, he moves a little bit to the right at first there, but on the second one he's kind of stepping around on the ramp while his target is running to the right. So he's tracking without their movements being mirrored. This one, I think he tracks this second player through a wall as well. Right there. So first player. But he's jumping off to the right, so that their movement appears to be that aligned is not as suspicious as the previous clip because he's jumping off to the right, if that makes sense. But I still think he's tracking this player before he rounds the corner. This can be... Sometimes it seems like, oh, they're tracking this player before they could see them, but actually the resolution is just so bad that they could actually see the guy, but they're just like a smudge of pixels. But I think on this one, you can see the muzzle flash there, so not yet around the corner here. So everything before his reticle gets to this edge, he probably couldn't see this player. I don't think this black shape is the player coming out around the corner and not firing. Yeah, see, it's just something on the floor. Or just an artifact in the video to do with the reticle. Okay, so there's his flash. So everything before his reticle gets to this edge, he can't see this player. But you can see snaps right to him before his reticle gets to that edge. Like, his reticle gets to that edge when he starts to track this player. So obviously he didn't see him. And it's right on him. Again, he's jumping off to the right while the target's moving right, so that it appears to track is maybe not that bad. But his aim at the end is kind of wonky too. It's actually a little windmill, and it's a little windmill or just a little bounce to the head. Enough that I think that's kind of weird. So he's jumping, but his aim bounces down to his feet, right? His aim bounces down to his feet before it goes back to his head. And just when you're jumping there, like, again, these guys aren't perfect, but they know up from down. That's why that one looks weird, because it snaps to the guy's feet and then it snaps to the guy's head. despite the fact that if he's going for the kill shot here, he should obviously be pressing up, and he knows up from down. So again, this tracking movement, kind of suspicious, but he did see that character going there, so he could guess the timing. He's jumping, so maybe it's not that bad, but it's when you combine it with the suspicious firing movement, it starts to look pretty suspicious. So another one from Solder 187. So again, aim going haywire right as the target goes behind cover. So he snaps perfectly to this guy. And then his aim just goes totally wonky because the part of the guy's body that the aimbot is targeting goes behind the wall. So yeah, there he's snapped completely. He snaps, and he's kind of even tracking that person to the right. He's even tracking them to the right, and now he's going straight up. But then as soon as he shoots, he goes that far to the left and up. Okay, no, he's walking back up the ledge here. So yeah, just oddly sharp given that he shouldn't be doing anything like that. He's already tracking. He's going straight to the head. Now, as soon as he gets to the head, and as soon as he pulls the trigger, all of a sudden he's there. So this one is similar. His aim's going to release oddly when the player dies. See how sharp it is. So yeah, that's one of those ones that on MCC, it's more normal to have things like that happen, but on the 360, that's just way too sharp. So I think this is the first clip from SK. This one's not that bad, but sharp stab in, like maybe he could have actually shot this guy, you know? So it's just like, yeah, of course you're gonna miss, but they always like sharply miss into the wall. Like sometimes it's like right where the player is, but oftentimes it's just like a little bit more ahead. Like you'll see it's really common. It's a sharp movement right to where the player is, or it's a little bit ahead of where the player is. I don't know why that is, but you're going to see it's really common. So it's kind of this, I've seen players miss like this so many times. And with this one, it's also, I'm starting to see with these, like, after it goes into the wall and stabs, it kind of swings out. It goes into the wall and stabs, and then instead of going off and doing something else while you've missed, there's this downward motion, and it's not straight down and then they go. It's this kind of swing out. Like they go up, attack into the wall, and then there's this swing down. Like he goes up, he shoots at that one spot, and like stops his aim as if this was ever going to land, right? He's shooting blatantly like off target, but there's kind of this hesitation where the reticle kind of like hangs there in the air almost, and then goes down and swings out. And it's pretty close to being to the character, but it's more where he was going to be. And yeah, and he could have shot this guy, right? But maybe not. Yeah, so it's more just that, like, it's not as bad. It's not the textbook one that I'm looking for where their aim resolves back to the initial location, even though there's really no reason to do that. Not only is there no reason to do that, it's actually kind of hard to do. And like normally this would look fine, but this stab and then it stabs and then the aim stays there as if SK thought this was actually going to hit this guy, right? Like you should know pretty soon after firing this off, you should know you're going to miss. So what's he waiting for? So that's actually really common. It's not just that stabbing into the wall. It's that they stab into the wall and then the aim just kind of stays there while the shot completes, even though they should know they were never going to hit this guy and they should be doing something else already. And then, yeah, there's a lot of times a downward motion after that. Okay, so this one, well, let's see. So, this one, I again think that the acceleration on this kickout is just a little extreme. Like, he's basically tracking the guy. He's really accurately snapped to the guy at first there, and then he gets shot, and all of a sudden the acceleration on his aim is really high, and I think a little bit excessive here. And obviously at that point it's pretty wild, and his snap recovery is oddly sharp and triangular and perfect. Not quite perfect, but pretty close. And on MCC, a good player, their kickout recovery is going to be pretty good. But on the 360, it was much harder. Again, if you watch Tylenol's stream and his kickout recovery is instantaneous and perfect 50 times in a row, like maybe that's not legit. But instantaneous perfect recovery on the 360 is... Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but when you combine it with this acceleration, kicking him out this hard on something that he's tracking perfectly... Yeah, I don't like that one. So this one actually isn't that bad, maybe, now that I've watched it again. At first I thought this was an instance of him trying to shoot the second player, but his aimbot going towards the first. But he actually sees the person higher up on the ramp first, so this could just be a reaction time thing. So he sees the first guy and goes, okay, well, I'm going to shoot that guy instead. And then the second guy runs out, so he shoots the second guy instead. But I still think it's a little weird because if he was gonna shoot the first guy, I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get closer to him. Like, so... Well, okay, so the second guy pops out, gets aim assistance, and he pops out, like... If SK was further along the way at aiming at this first guy on the ramp, this would be suspicious. But yeah, this is probably normal. The little chop back and forth after the kill is maybe weird. So yeah, I'm still a little surprised that he didn't get closer, that he turns this around so fast and didn't get closer to the first player that he intended to shoot. And then yeah, the little chop back and forth at the end is a little sus, but that clip's really not that bad. This one is just a weird little hop in his aiming when his target goes behind a wall. See how his aim bounces up and down? If you're just zooming in, like, he's zooming in when his aim is almost there practically. So he's just kind of zooming in, and then his aim bounces up and down as it gets kind of to the edge of P2. See how it just bounces? That really shouldn't happen there. Like, if you lose the aim assistance because the player's going behind the wall, you're just going to lose aim assistance. And your aim is just going to become exaggerated. It doesn't really make your aim move up and down, because if it did, it would feel terrible to play. So this one is about the stutter on his second shot at this guy. See how his aim stutters a little bit on the second guy? That sharp and quick of a stutter is pretty unusual. That's not really an aiming adjustment that people make. Quick stutter. And then this is combined with, after this, like, his aim goes down, and kind of, after it, his aim kind of goes down and just stops moving. And then he unzooms, and then he does something else. Like, there's just a weird hesitation to this, where he's shooting this guy, and then his aim's doing nothing. Until he's like, okay, I'm going to do something with my aim now. But in this circumstance, there's not really a reason for him to just stop doing something with his aim right there. So yeah, this odd hesitation I think is suspicious, and we're going to see this a lot. But once again, it's the fact that there's two suspicious movements in a single clip that's a few seconds long. So you have the stuttering aim there, and then just odd hesitation where he's not doing anything. On this clip, I missed that SK's body movement stops as well. Which makes this clip a little weirder. Like he stops moving completely. This one again is just about the sharp movement. About the sharp movement into the wall when he shoots. And it's just about the crispness with which he's making that movement, and then the crispness of the rebound after it. So yeah, this one's not that bad, but that movement is a little too sharp, in my opinion. So the clips from SK haven't been that bad, so I probably wouldn't put him on the probable list yet, but because, I mean, it probably seems like I'm saying, oh, this could be this or this could be that, and I'm looking at clips and I'm saying they're suspicious, but I'm not saying like this is definitely an aimbot. So maybe it sounds weird to people, I don't know, but I can tell from his clips so far that he probably is using an aimbot, and I believe it will become apparent as we continue this. But so far, the clips haven't been terrible, and I wouldn't put him on the probable list. Because even though I'm saying, oh, this can be normal, and I'm not saying definitively this clip only occurs when someone's using an aimbot, even though I'm not doing that, this evidence continues to pile up to the point where I'm confident saying it's the only explanation. And I'm pretty sure, based on SK's clips so far, that that is going to happen for him. But it hasn't happened yet. And those clips, like, if those clips were his only clips in the tournament, I would never come out and say that SK was cheating for sure. But I know, based on what we've seen so far, that there's going to be 100 of them, probably. So this is the first clip from Chig. This is about the sharpness. So I don't actually know how this aimbot works. Maybe it's a pixel detector, because it's pretty weird to me that, like, he's tracking the flag, but then his aim, after he's done shooting at the flag, the sharpness of the movement to the wall is pretty suspicious. That's a really sharp movement. That's, again, something that you might see in MCC when you lose a frame or two. But we can step through this one. There's a frame. There's a frame. 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 His aim moves. So frame. Then I press the button twice and his aim moves. So there's no missing frame here. His aim just snaps there. And yeah, that's just really sharp. It's really sharp and short. And it's hard to get a movement that sharp, that's short, because you have to press the thumbstick more. And it's also just, yeah, it's about how sharp it stops, like, and the fact that there aren't missing frames to produce that. So this one, there's a few things going on in this one. First, this first snap, I don't really like. This first snap to head level before he tries to target the guy. This is actually one of the more common aimbot indicators, or one of the more reliable aimbot indicators, is perfect snaps to head level or perfect snaps to player center line outside of the influence of aim assistance. Those, like, yes, they're going to happen in gameplay, but you'd be surprised how, especially at distance, they're pretty rare. When it's a snap, right? So there. It's a snap right to head level when there just so happens to be a player there. So you have the snap to head level, and then you have the back and forth motion on this kill. Because again, people are going to make little adjustments and shoot. And he is jumping right. So this could happen. This effect could happen. But it's just a little too crisp. He's jumping to the right. So it should just be a little more natural than this. See how it's really evenly choppy, back and forth, back and forth. So you have the snap to head level, the chop on that, and then a really small windmill on this last kill. So snap to head level, then his aim's going back and forth, and then he has a little windmill on that kill. And that's getting into the size of windmill that is pretty odd. And it's also, windmills will be fast and have their own kind of acceleration to them, and that's natural. This windmill is just an even speed around the circle. So again, any one of these things happens, I wouldn't think anything of it. But when you have three, so that's the thing, is that I know that I've seen all of these things from an aimbot, so it's probably easy for people to look at this and be like, this doesn't mean anything. Especially if you're saying, like, yeah, this is normal, and this is normal, so what are we talking about? But when there's three of them in the span of 10 seconds, yeah. So this is another weird clip from the same guy from earlier who has 15 sensitivity. So I've talked about this previously, but on the 360, it was really common for players to acquire targets or even just move their aim in rectilinear fashion along the x-axis, then along the y-axis. It was really common to acquire targets that way, but I'm not sure if I've ever seen a BR kickout that resolves into straight X and Y movements. So he gets shot, and then he goes straight up, straight left, straight down. And yeah, there's just a crispness to it. that is really weird. It's, again, such a weird clip that I'm not really comfortable saying it's the aimbot I'm familiar with. And because this motion is technically, you do find this in legit gameplay. But yeah, so he's pretty close. He gets on target. And then as he kicks out, he's maybe moving his aim straight up. So the first motion is normal, but it's the motion left. It's just really sudden and really sharp. And since he was on the guy and moving straight up, this fast of a movement is pretty weird. And yeah, again, probably the only BR kickout that I've ever seen that becomes just straight line movements. So this clip is about the last shot. You can see the reticle bounce around a little bit. He doesn't just aim at the head and then shoot. His reticle bounces around. He is falling though. Yeah, I think that one's kind of bad. Sometimes if the player's moving a certain way, or sometimes the reticle kind of interacts with people's shields flickering in a way that makes it kind of look like the aim is bouncing around when it's not really. But I think this is pretty clear bouncing. So this is an aiming movement that I hadn't really seen much of before this tournament, but that I think is fairly suspicious. So, I mean, it's obviously just kind of wonky. But the way he turns, and while this first shot is happening, his aim stays a consistent distance from the target. Even though they're moving in opposite directions. So it's weird because it's tracking his target perfectly, but he's tracking really badly. But as soon as the burst is done firing, then he's snapping to the target. But he should already know that he's basically missing. So it's weird to me that he's not trying to make any adjustment. Or whatever adjustment he is making is perfect off tracking. Until the moment that he's done firing the burst. And then a little sharp after his target goes out of view, but that's within normal tolerances. That's not his aim swinging way off or his aim jittering because his target went behind cover. This is more normal where you're losing the aim assistance, but you're still inputting something. And then what you're inputting becomes an exaggerated, inaccurate movement that's sharper. So that's normal tolerances. That's more what it's supposed to look like. But this perfect off tracking. While their movement is opposite. Yeah. In this clip, he seems to aim at somebody he can't see. The follow-up is pretty wonky, too. Bouncing on and off a guy from that far away, that sharply, is a little strange. That, and then the wonkiness is not that bad. But it is back and forth in a way that is usually aimbot indicative, or can be aimbot indicative. But when you combine it with how quickly he snaps to this guy, and how sharply he does it, this is a pretty bad clip. So, one more time. In slow-mo. So, there's SK. So I think this is pretty clearly the first frame that he can see him. So watch how fast the motion is after the first frame. First frame. That's pretty fast. So there's a few different things going on in this clip. For one, this guy is very accurate. That's not really relevant, but it kind of is. More importantly, this clip is a really good example of someone chopping up and down or pulsing up and down to the head. And there's a third thing too. See the pulsing? So yeah, just watch how much pulsing up and down his aim does. So that's pretty bad. And then here, so he's targeting Chig. And then he targets Chig again. So, but there must have been, there's somebody else on the P2 ramp or up here that he probably should have reacted to and tried to shoot instead. See how long the second player is in frame, and he doesn't go after him at all. So yeah, once again, well actually this vertical chop and pulse is actually on the 360. You really shouldn't see that. There's two things that are bad in this clip. The first, he appears to aim at Washy before he can see him. And then secondly, at the end of the clip, when he backs into P2 and Walshy moves behind the wall that's in front of thrust, his aim goes wonky. A little too wonky when it really shouldn't have done anything.
John's back to flag, guys. Focus on killing their flag.
So, rounds this corner. Rounds this corner pretty much with the correct lead on Walshy.
John's back to flag, guys. Focus on killing their flag. John's back to flag, guys. John's back to flag, guys. Focus on. John's back to flag, guys. Focus on.
This is probably.
John's back to flag, guys. Focus on. John's back to flag, guys. Focus on.
That windmill's okay.
John's back to flag, guys. Focus on killing their flag.
That's not really too weird a situation for that to happen.
Guys. Focus on killing their flag.
But then, right as he backs back into P2, see the pop in his aim? He is moving left, so it's not too bad, but I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be there. So yeah, here maybe he does that again, and the pop after this headshot is excessive.
Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Flag guy. Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Flag guy. Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Flag. Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Flag.
He's just
Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys.
he's turning and then he's tracking almost instantaneously. And then the way his aim releases on this one, the way his aim releases on this kill is also a little suspicious.
Jump up, 2 shots to jump up, guys. Flag guy. I got one. I don't know where it I don't know where
This clip is pretty textbook. Really sharp little motions that are until he's really locked on to him. And then this motion after the kill is nonsense, right? His aim goes up that much and then straight down, even though he's tracking Chig down and to the left. Where does this up motion come from? So he locks onto him with strange, sharp movements. And then the post-kill movement is nonsense. This is a weird clip. So there's a really strange pause in this one. But it must just be like an issue with the LAN connection or something. See how there's that pause there, and I think this is Chig. See how there's that pause there. It's really weird because if you go through frame by frame, the frames appear to be there. You can see the grenades continuing to move. Like, there, the grenade moves. This goes off the screen. This top grenade is moving with the frames still. Still moving. So the grenades keep moving, but Chig appears to be frozen mid-stride. So yeah, about there. Frame, the grenades are moving, Chig is frozen. and then he starts moving. So I'm not really sure why it looks that weird. But as soon as Chig goes behind the banana, this guy's aim just kind of, it resets, and there's that kind of odd hesitation that I've talked about, where he should be on to the next thing, and instead, as soon as Chig goes behind the banana, his aim goes wonky, and then he just kind of pauses and doesn't do anything for a second. After going back and watching this clip again, this might actually be the smoking gun, because I didn't notice at first, but Ash's movement, so this is the one where Chig freezes mid-stride for several frames. I didn't count the frames, but I'm not sure I've ever seen a player freeze like that. And the grenades are still moving, so it's a really weird clip. And I didn't notice at first that Ash's movement matches his. See how they change direction at the same time and with the same tempo? It would be really interesting if someone has the VOD for Chig in this game, because it might show that Ash's freezes at the same time, and that could be a smoking gun. So I'm probably not going to go into too much detail about this right now, because I feel like I'm already talking too much about some of these things, or giving you too much information. But the aimbot snipes in some really specific ways, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. So yeah, obviously this is a pretty sharp snipe with a zoom at this distance for the 360. There's obviously nothing wrong with this clip, but this is going to become relevant later. So this clip is pretty bad. This one is about the sharpness of his kickout recovery. On the first kickout recovery, it's about the sharpness, and then on the second kickout recovery, he's pretty immediately accurate. So yeah, the first one, really, really sharp. And then the second one recovers his aim almost immediately. Which sometimes just based on how you're moving, or that you're not putting in much aiming input, sometimes you just recover the aim basically perfectly without even doing anything. But he's like jumping back into the hallway while he just kind of recovers this practically instantaneously. Not quite instantaneously, but that second recovery is pretty fast, and it's very accurate back into a tracking movement, basically. So, Washy. Washy I'm not really sure about yet. I don't remember much about his clips. I do know he played like an entire series against people I'd never heard of before, and they never showed his POV. They showed his POV for like 10 seconds in one game, which I thought was weird. So yeah, obviously, laser sharp, laser quick, laser sharp, laser quick, and it's accurate. See how accurate it stops when it's that fast? Yeah, that's a bad one. So in this clip, SK gets kicked out of scope and still lands the shot. He gets kicked out, but he pretty immediately makes the adjustment to the right and still lands the shot on this guy. So in slow motion. So he gets kicked out. Kind of off target there. And there he starts to turn. Kicked out. Starts to turn. So he does turn and land the shot still. Which is really fast. And then on the second guy, this is just a weird release on the kill. Like there's kind of a little bounce to it. And then he just doesn't do anything with his aim. Which, again, it's not like you have to do that to not be cheating. But it's just a little weird. And if you were playing, this isn't really a shot that you would expect would have killed the guy. To me, it looks like he's basically missing this. So the fact he takes a shot that appears to miss and then just doesn't do anything for almost a full second. Weird. This is one of those ones that someone who's only played on MCC would say, oh, I've seen the reticle do things that sharp before. But that stuff didn't happen on the 360 very much. And if it does, it pretty much has to be like a complete glitch. So the fact that this happens right when he loses line of sight is textbook aimbot behavior. In this clip, first we have more pulsing to the head, and then we have some serious wonkiness when his target goes behind cover. See how every shot on SK is up and down? So pulsing to the head, and then this one. Just the acceleration and the movement on that is all wrong. And the reason it happens is because his target is going behind cover. And the way it just goes up and then pauses. It goes up and then hangs at the top of that movement like it's a roller coaster or something. Yeah, nonsense. So let's see where we're at so far. So I know I keep saying oh, this can be natural, this can be natural. But this is where I'm at so far, just based on the clips that we've seen. Trashes, lock cheater. Z Blightmare, lock cheater. Solder 187, lock cheater. His clips have been pretty bad. The going incredibly wonky as soon as his target passed behind the little bar on the construct lift. The stabbing at targets behind cover. The clip where he tracks the guy at the car bubble, or not the car bubble, at the carbine, is pretty bad. Probable. Washy. That clip at the overshield is pretty bad. Puyu. We haven't seen much from him, but his entire team is probably cheating, so he probably is too. BK, I'm still on the fence about at this point, but I've seen enough that I'd put him at probable. Lunch Bucket hasn't been in here too much, but the sharp back and forths, the stabbing at cover, some of that stuff in those early clips actually was pretty bad and enough to be probable in my opinion. And then Bust, again, probably cheating because I'm already 100% sure that half of his team is. So this one, there's nothing at the start. They must have just hopped on board with him. Otherwise, I would have had the start of that. But this one is weird because he's doing his pulse. He's doing his pulse there, but he's coming up way short. Like, coming up that short and then pulsing your aim back down is pretty weird. You should be still trying to aim at the guy. And I can't remember if it was him or just a different person on his team who had that clip on midship where his aim stayed kind of locked off target while the burst finished. And that was a pretty strange movement and not one that I've seen before. And this reminds me of that a lot. Just pulsing, coming up completely short, but still pulsing for some reason. This clip is pretty bad. So, first off, I think he tracks this guy too quickly. Like, he didn't really know what this guy was going to do, but he tracks him immediately to the left. Like, that guy could have been doing anything. He didn't know he was going to land on top of the barrier and then immediately start moving left. So he tracks him too quick there, in my opinion. And then the up-down on that stab is just sharp and weird. It's more of that stabbing to a target behind cover and having the aim rebound to a position that there's really no point to doing that movement. And again, it's really just, yeah, there's just no point to doing it like that, and it's so sharp and probably accurate, pretty close to accurate to where that guy is, and there's no reason for it. And almost everybody using these aimbots does that exact thing. So in rewatching some of this, I found a second instance of Ash's body movement matching another player's. See how his strafing is matched? So yeah, that's pretty weird, and the one with Chig could be a smoking gun. So I forgot to mention this, but there are 2 people so far from this video who are not on this list yet, and that's Chig and a really good noob. A really good noob had the weird snipe at the start, but I'm not really sure. I haven't figured that out yet, just how weird that is. And then Chig's clips have not been that bad, so everybody from this video so far is on the list except for those 2. So Chig made the list with this clip. So there's a few different things going on in this one. First, the way he snaps to this player, and then the way his aim releases as soon as he's out of line of sight. It's weird. So tracking perfectly. The guy moves out of line of sight. Now suddenly he's looking at the floor. Then his aim is pretty bouncy. It's pretty bouncy in general. And then what's really strange is how wonky it gets when there's cover involved. Especially when the guy goes behind this bar. His aim just jumps because the bar's in the way. But it's jumping around accurately in a way that is very strange. In a normal clip, his aim is just going to kind of normally track this player through this stuff. It's not going to jump around all of the obstacles involved. So yeah, bouncing and jumping around, really weird as soon as there's cover involved. Yeah, that's a bad one. That clip was actually really bad, so bad enough that I'm going to put him at lock cheater. Kick. So this clip is pretty bad. Really janky. Janky, but almost accurate. So the first shot is whatever. The second shot appears to be influenced by Nightmare, despite it probably shouldn't have been. So his aim appears to be drawn to Nightmare, but the second shot still lands on this first player's center line. So first shot's whatever. Second shot appears influenced by a player who shouldn't be influencing his aim, but he still somehow arrives He still somehow snaps to this player's center line, and then he does what I call off tracking, which, so I said before that perfect snaps to head level or player center line. So perfect snaps to head level like that, up to head level, or horizontally to player center line outside of the influence of aim assistance is one of the stronger aimbot indicators. But the strongest one is snaps to head level or player center line outside of aim assistance that turn immediately into perfect tracking movements, or more specifically, perfect off tracking aiming movements, where they appear to be tracking the player perfectly despite not really having aim assistance. He was close enough to get aim assistance there, but it's still weird how well he's tracking, but just off the player. So yeah, snaps there accurately. The guy's going up the lift. The next snap is pretty much accurately as the guy's going up the lift. So yeah, a lot of any one thing you could take out of this clip, any one thing isolated out of this clip wouldn't be bad, but the fact that this all happens in like 2 seconds is suspicious. Here we're just going to see a snap to a player behind a wall. That's really, really sharp. That last one, obviously. Very sharp movement that just comes to a dead stop. So this clip is interesting. It's not really a situation where you expect to see this many straight axial lines. It's not out of the question, but it's a pretty weird clip. It's also pretty sharp and janky. But yeah. So it seems like this could be when he rezooms there. Like even that initial motion seems like it could be a response to this player's location, which I haven't really seen in the tournament that much, but is really, really common with this aimbot. So at the very least, once he gets to about this point and starts remaking this motion to rezoom, it appears like it might be faster than reaction time, but it's hard to say because the resolution is so bad. It's totally possible that that player is actually visible here and it's just a brown smudge. So, but if the player's not visible, this is a really bad clip. So this is a clip that it would be really nice to have a better version of. So this clip is pretty weird. So first there's a pop in his aim. But this is actually frame dropped, so it's not that weird. I can slow this down, and right before his aim pops, I have to press the skip frame button 4 times before I get a new frame, which means there was a dropped frame, which when you're only playing at 30 frames per second, and you're dropping frames, things get pretty wonky pretty fast. This is relevant because people are always telling me, oh, his aim's not suspicious, it's just frame drop. But all you need to do is go into this program and see how many times you need to press this button to figure out if that's going on. So, not that complicated. But it's still weird because he accidentally unzooms and then rezooms at pretty much the same time. And it's also the same time that Chig moves behind cover. So he unzooms on accident right when Chig is going to cover, and then he rezooms. So, still a weird clip. And then he's pretty janky around this pillar. So pretty janky around this pillar. And then these last two shots, his aim seems to be bouncing around a little bit, especially on this last one. Going back and forth a little bit. And the second to last shot is weird to me because he's pretty much on Washy here. He just needs to go up to the head, which he starts to do, but he's going off to the right a little bit. But then he appears to correct back to the left. Right there. Enough to get that kill. But then his aim resolves off to the right. And actually appears to do like a little circle. So yeah, it seems pretty obvious, like that doesn't look like it's going to hit. So he should be trying to aim left here instead of right to finish this kill, because it looks like he's going to miss. Except he does do that. He goes to the left just barely, just enough to hit Walshy's head. And then his aim goes way off to the right and then does a little circle. Pretty weird. And then after he's done with the little circle, there's a little back and forth. This one is just kind of janky and pulses towards the head a little bit. It's chopping up and down towards the head and just kind of janky but also accurate. Especially the second shot, the up and down on that is pretty weird. This is again one of those things that people are going to say, oh, I see this on MCC all the time, but this is pretty rare. That level of jank is pretty rare on the 360 actually, and shouldn't be happening in practically every clip. This clip is pretty bad. He pretty clearly aims at this player before he can see him, and then at the end he makes kind of the textbook stab to behind the wall, but immediately goes back to the previous position before he fires. Like, yeah, that's gonna happen sometimes, but That one is pretty blatant, in my opinion. So yeah. So he turns to him. He turns to him exactly. Tracks him for a little bit. Is tracking him. But then goes off to the right. And then immediately back. And when he goes immediately back, there's a really sharp back and forth there. It's a sharp back and forth. Kind of rubber bands back to the guy. Really janky. And then this last one. Really sharp. It's that really sharp movement that goes right back to where it was. Textbook. So yeah, again, I may be repeating myself too much, but again, like, this could happen naturally. But once you put all three aimbot indicators in a clip this short, it kind of becomes obvious what's actually going on, right? This clip is just pulsing vertical movements in the aim. Textbook. Here's solder, maybe doing the same thing. It's tough to tell for sure because of the resolution, but possibly aims at this player before he can see him. There's not a lot of places this player could have been, but he could have been... He could have been anywhere in here, and he just kind of hits it that quick. And then the release on the kill shot is very weird. A really sharp vertical movement for no real reason. And then it's not just how sharp that movement is. It's that the movement kind of hangs at the top. It kind of goes up and then it hangs. And then he snaps right back down and turns. So, in this clip, this is about how his aim bounces around when the guy goes around the corner. His aim kind of, he's pulsing up and down a little bit, but his aim kind of swings off to the right and just gets really wonky as soon as the player's behind the corner. The way his aim bounces off this player is pretty weird. So this clip is pretty weird. His first kill is not that weird. the shot after the kill is a little bit. Like he dies and then he goes back and forth, but pretty accurately. A small, sharp, accurate movement, even though the player's dead. And then the second player, there's just something about the way his aim accelerates as it starts to grab the second player that I think is weird. And it's not just that, but he then starts to track him perfectly, but he's off tracking again. He's tracking this player, but his reticle is a consistent distance from him. And that's not very common. So yeah, the jank combined with perfect off tracking, pretty weird. So Puyu with a pretty suspicious snap here. Snaps to soldier through the glass. So here he's pretty accurate, but really janky, and he has a pretty much instantaneous kickout recovery that shouldn't have been that easy because he's not moving around. He's just moving his aim, and he gets kicked out, but he still doesn't drop a shot. He's doing this all with his right thumbstick. Gets kicked out, doesn't drop a shot. One more time. And yeah, these are all pretty sharp movements for how small they are too. So he's really janky again in this clip. And again, that's really not so much the problem as it is the jankiness combined with accuracy. Which, if you find jankiness like this on the 360 in a game, it's usually not going to be this accurate. Like the guy in the hill, he ends up being really accurate, including this last shot where his lead is probably pretty close to ideal. And again, this is something that you'll see in MCC more often. But on the 360, you really shouldn't see this very much. Especially because, again, he's that janky and sharply back and forth. But then the kill shot is actually in like the perfect position. And then on the last guy here, he gives up. Like, he's doing the same thing that one of his teammates was doing that I really haven't seen much before, where he's shooting and stopping his aim adjustment when it's super obvious that he's not even close to hitting this guy yet. Like, he's shooting and moving his aim back to the right when he's still, like, he's got 10 feet to go still. Like, why is he even pulling the trigger there? Especially on the second one. Actually, that's not that weird. It is weird that he is just giving up on actually getting his aim to where the player is, but he's still shooting. So yeah, that's pretty weird, and again, not something that I've seen until this particular team. So yeah, he's also, after this kill shot, he's moving his aim almost immediately, and given how out of control his aim was, I'm really not sure that he should have been confident. He shouldn't have been this confident that that shot was going to land and kill that player. But it's obvious that he started turning very quick. Where if you're going back and forth and your aim's off that much, you're probably going to make sure, and you're targeting this player first to begin with because he's in the hill, you're probably going to make sure that player dies before. But see, he lands that janky shot and then he's immediately turning towards this player. This is one of those sharp motions to a player behind a wall that immediately resolves back to the original location. It's got a snapback on it. Stabs into the wall. And then snaps back down. This one's not as bad because he's moving to the right, but there's just a sharpness about it that is not natural. And textbook for this aimbot. So this one's pretty weird. You can see his aim pop. But not really, because this is just frame drop again. So it looks bad, but it's again one where, so there it is. So there's a frame. There's a frame. That should have been a frame because I pressed it twice, nothing changed. So I press it twice, nothing changes. I press it twice, then it changes. So I had to press it 4 times, so there's a missing frame. Not exactly rocket science. This is the kind of reticle glitch that you'll see in MCC in legit gameplay that is really strange on the 360. The vertical and horizontal movements there are pretty strange too. Probably because they're so sharp. They're so sharp and there's just kind of an odd delay. Like, this is what he was intending to do. But why is the up motion so short? The guy's falling down. Like, why are you not going horizontally to him first? And why are you just going up that little amount before you go horizontally? And why is there such a delay in the 2 motions if that's the player you're targeting? It's also obviously directly to the player's center line outside of any aim assistance. And then probably to compensate for how bad this looks, the aimbot has his aim go off real quick before it goes back onto the player. Because, I mean, he's done this perfectly in a very, very strange way. He's done this perfectly, and as soon as the player drops into his reticle and he's getting the aim assistance, now he's going off target really sharply. So this one, there's a really small bounce in his aim when the player goes out of line of sight. When SK goes behind the edge here, there's just a little tiny bounce in his aim. Down and up. Little tiny bounce. Not supposed to happen. So I've seen enough from Puyu now that I'm going to go ahead and add him to the lock cheater list. Bust, I'm pretty sure, shows up later in this video. I'm pretty sure he's going to make the list, but maybe it was just the rest of his team that was cheating and he wasn't. We'll see. So here Puyu catches some aim assistance as he's going up the lift. It's really subtle, but you can kind of see his aim go back and forth as he's going up the lift. Kind of going back and forth really subtly, but that really shouldn't happen, especially on the 360 when you're just going up the lift. And it's happening because there's guys right here. This is really common in my videos, and I see this a lot, where someone's aim will do something wonky for apparently no reason, and it actually is because it's reacting to somebody behind the wall somewhere on the map. And lots of times it'll do something wonky and I can watch it and say, okay, there's going to be somebody there, and then there is. This is actually probably a situation on Xbox Live where you might, if this played out a little bit differently, this is a situation where it might look like you get aim assistance, or you actually do get aim assistance through the wall or kind of at the edge. So if this was on Xbox Live, I probably wouldn't really care about this one. But yeah, just really subtle back and forth while he's going up the lift. And it's because his reticle is reacting to the people at the top of the lift. So there's a few different things happening in this clip. First, he appears to track this player before he can see him. See, he snaps somewhere behind the wall, and then starts moving right at the exact perfect time to track this player. See how aligned that is? And then the vertical movement up and then down is pretty exaggerated there. Some people do that. Whatever. But yeah, he's obviously tracking this player. Probably snapped to him behind the wall, and then he starts moving right at just the right time to track that player. And he also accidentally brings up the score screen while he's doing this. Not really sure what that's about. I'm pretty sure they could use scuff controllers back then. So maybe he had the scoreboard on a back button or something. I personally wouldn't put the scoreboard on a back button that I was hitting on accident. But he brings up the scoreboard while he's... yeah. So I guess he's not tracking the player per se. He's tracking the player's center line. He's off tracking this player perfectly. And then up to the head, straight down, while he's bringing up the scoreboard. So yeah, and then he brings it up a few more times. Then he brings it up. Brings it up while he starts to congratulate his team. And then, yeah. So, kind of weird. And then the scoreboard shows up at the end of the game. This is a really bad clip. Just a really sharp acceleration for no reason. I mean, he's just like pre-scoping this and walking around the corner, right? So his aim really shouldn't do anything here. But it goes off that sharply and then snaps back like pretty accurately cross map. So I'm not exactly sure what would cause this. If I had to guess, right as he rounds the corner here, there was probably a player right at the edge who was going to snipe or going into the lobby, and that caused it to go wonky. So in this clip, he has a very quick kickout recovery that should be pretty rare on the 360 in my opinion. And his aim also bounces around on his last shot. So yeah, nearly perfect kickout recovery on that. And then the movement on that last burst is pretty erratic there. Janky and erratic, but like his aim doesn't appear to be that great, but then he's getting that perfect of a kick out recovery. Okay, well he hits this snipe, so maybe his aim's not that bad. Maybe he's just using an aimbot. This is, again, just kind of a perfect snap. This is him sniping again with just a tiny movement to player center line. This seems to be the only way his aimbot is capable of sniping. So this clip is pretty bad. There are no dropped frames in this one. And obviously you can see his aim pop up and down when this player goes out of sight. So that's pretty bad. And then he jumps through the cannon and pretty accurately tracks a falling player. Which is fine, obviously. It's just kind of a joke at this point. So this clip has a really sharp up and down stab to a player behind cover and some vertical chop in it. So yeah, the sharp stab into the mohawk that goes up and down, pretty much where Washy is. And then that sharp chop up and down on SK. That's textbook. This clip in isolation probably wouldn't be that bad. He just, probably without any aim assistance, snaps to the second player here at nades. It's just a pretty nice snap. Again, in isolation, this would mean practically nothing, but since we basically know this guy's using the aimbot at this point, I just threw it in there. So here we have trashes greatly exceeding human reaction time. And there's also vertical chop there. A little bit of back and forth jankiness. He gets the call out at R1, but R1 could mean anything, so I mean, you can say this is pre-firing if you want, but whatever. So sometimes the resolution's bad again, so sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. Okay, so this black smudge there appears to be his gun. I mean, maybe that's it. I wouldn't give it to him on that frame. Maybe he could see the player during this frame. So at 4.5, and he's shooting at 4.9. So 4 divided by 60 is 67 milliseconds. This is just a snipe consisting of 2 separate snaps to player center line. Which, again, nothing wrong with this. Center line, center line. This could be normal, except that I'm starting to think that this team's aimbot only knows how to snipe that way. So obviously another big name here. There's several different things going on in this clip. First, it's just janky in general. Then there's some weird shooting. There's a weird turnaround in his aim. And then he appears to aim at Tizoxic before he can see him. He can see where the bullets are coming in at, so it's feasible that he would have done this like that, where he's turning down to him before he can see him. But if that was the case, like his aim goes right to him, and then it goes off to the right, and then right back to him, which again is something that we're going to see a lot of. Turns perfectly to him as he's turning around, but then his aim goes off and then back. So jankiness. This first shot towards the dumpster here, I think is a little strange. It's like ones we've seen before, where I feel like Hysteria should have known he was going to miss by that much, and he should have still been adjusting his aim towards the dumpster. Instead, he makes a big vertical movement, kind of waiting for the burst to finish before he starts adjusting towards the dumpster again. And then this turnaround. I don't really know how to describe it. I guess I would call it too consistent of a speed. The consistency and the smoothness of the speed and the shape that this turnaround makes is not normal, in my opinion. And it also passes through Tizoxic, and he shoots at him, but he doesn't commit to the shot at all, which is weird. So Hysteria has enough shields back that he could engage with that a little bit, or at least commit to the shot. But he's like turning around to finish Demon, but Demon's going in the box, so it's just a really weird turnaround in his aim that happens to go through that player, but he doesn't shoot. Or he does shoot, but he doesn't commit to the shot. So yeah, when taken all together, a pretty bad clip. So Hysteria again, turning right to a player. And then his aim kind of goes back and forth. It actually goes all the way off the player. So turns around, lines it up, turns around, it happens to align, and then his aim kind of goes back and forth and off Maniac a little bit. So yeah, pretty weird. So this clip is pretty bad too. It's pretty janky in general. So I think he gives up on shooting Demon a little too quickly. It wasn't really obvious to me that he was going to die. And then from about here until Snipe Down dies, I would classify this aiming movement as Serpentine, which is one of the more suspicious aiming movements and not one that I think I've ever seen in legit gameplay. See how it's not really going back and forth erratically? It's kind of gradually winding its way back and forth on target. Yeah, you won't see that in legit gameplay. And then he aims down at this dead body, which is fine, but this movement is pretty textbook. This is the sharp diagonal that I was talking about earlier, where it goes the wrong direction at first, because he's already aiming. He already aimed at this dead body completely, and he knows Maniac is in the bottom right corner. So why does his aim erratically go off to the left first before he goes right? This is really common with these aimbots, and it's probably designed to make it less obvious. But it actually becomes very obvious because Hysteria already aimed at the dead body and he knows left from right. So Hysteria is off to a pretty bad start. I'm going to put him on the list. Hysteria. I could maybe put him at Lock Cheater based on these clips, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And we have a lot of gameplay to review. And if we get there, we get there. There's not much going on in this clip, except that it's pretty janky for something that should be a pretty simple shot.
He's on the screen, he's coming back for flag number 4 untouched. He's on the screen, he's coming back for flag number 4 untouched.
There's a lot of jank there for something that should be pretty simple. And my rule about you can be really erratic or you can be accurate and you can't be both is probably going to apply to Hysteria pretty accurately. So this clip is really not that bad in isolation. It's very janky, and it has a very tight windmill in it, but one that could be legit. But it's very janky. It's janky and accurate. It's that combination of jankiness and then accuracy as his aim is popping around. He's got a strong tracking movement in it, and you can see how his aim goes haywire. He windmills and he gets the target, which is fine here. It's pretty sharp. That's pretty sharp. That's pretty sharp for the 360, actually. Like, not that the windmill itself is too tight to be legit, but just the sharpness of it is a little much for the 360. But his aim also goes pretty haywire as soon as Demon goes behind the bridge. Like, he really loses tracking there when he goes behind the bridge. But then he starts tracking again. So this is our first clip from Neighbor. This clip might be pretty bad, but I'm not sure yet. You can see when he takes the second shot how his aim is bouncing up and down. You really shouldn't see that with a 360 thumbstick. Probably any thumbstick. So that cyclical up and down bouncing is textbook aimbot behavior, but it is in line with an up and down cyclical bounce that I have seen in legit gameplay, but it's very rare, and I don't know why it happens. So this is one of those ones where you just file it away because it's probably pretty suspicious, but I have seen something similar to that in legit gameplay. So this clip is pretty bad. It's very janky. It has aiming movements that are wonky because the target goes behind cover, and it has a textbook aimbot indicator in it.
As we jump on board with him, it's 10 to 5. His stereo has at least 6 kills, fellas.
And he's playing it incredibly well. I mean, this Trigger Sound squad is just playing well. They haven't lost control yet. I believe the hype has been in their base the entire game.
And it really just shows the preparation that our...
The sharp back and forths.
As we jump on board with him, it's 10 to 5. His stereo has at least 6 kills, fellas.
And he's playing it incredibly well. I mean, this Trigger Sound squad is just playing well. They haven't lost control yet.
That's getting pretty close to an extra shot. In this circumstance, I wouldn't call this an extra shot because you're just shooting a lot when you're in situations like this sometimes. But here, he does the thing where he doesn't know right from left. So he knows where Maniac is. He's jumping, aiming way off to the right, sees him, and then before he snaps to him, he goes the wrong direction. Textbook. So again with this, it's not just the going the wrong direction at first. It's that almost every time this happens, the follow-up snap back to the target is almost always accurate.
Incredibly well. I mean, this trigger sound squad is just playing well. They haven't lost.
So Hysteria's clips are pretty bad so far, and I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot of him. So I'm going to go ahead and move him to Lock Cheater. And we're going to add Nabor to the probable list. Because when I say that natural cyclical rounded bouncing is rare, I mean very rare. So this says Hysteria, but it's actually Maniac. Our first clip for Maniac.
Pretty well with the exception of Carbon. They lost in place.
This is about how his aim releases after this player dies.
Pretty well with the exception of Carbon. They lost in place round 1 match.
If this were on MCC, I wouldn't have a big problem with this one. But that's pretty rare for 360. So this clip is just kind of weird. He turns around with the snipe, and he can probably see this player. He probably sees this player at first there, and that's why he aims that direction. But he just stops like really short. Like he just stops that short suddenly. Like, why are you not trying to snipe the guy? So it just comes up really short and then stops. So just bad. And then kind of erratic. But then he does land the shot at the end. Which, you know, is fine. But that's not a very high percentage shot. So this clip is pretty bad. There's a very small little bounce. There's a very small sharp bounce during this snipe. So if you slow this one down, you can see he's going down, and then he shoots, so he gets the recoil. So for his recoil to go this high, he stopped aiming down. So he's aiming down. He stops aiming down because his recoil goes that high. If you're going straight down like this on a snipe and you keep going down, you don't really see the recoil. So the fact there's that much recoil means he's not moving the reticle down anymore. Except immediately after he shoots, there it goes. So he gets the recoil for 1 frame, and now he's back to pressing down again. And he goes down just a little bit. So that's where this bounce comes from. This particular bounce, not these bounces in general. So he's going down, stops going down for just 1 frame, and then goes down a little bit again. That's pretty weird. When you think about how fast these 2 down motions would have to be to make a bounce so sharp that the player goes out of focus, that's a bad one. Not really sure what's going on here. These aimbots can target teammates. I do know that.
And it was a good job by me. Oh, no, that's huge. That was a big choke. But it was a good job by Maniac right there, noticing that his oops.
I was curious to see what the announcers would say about this one.
And it was a good job by me. Oh, no.
Like, maybe he was trying to throw this at the right pocket or something. but I don't know why he would do that with his teammate standing there.
And it was a good step by me. Oh, no, that's
So,
huge.
you know, that's pretty bad. Not aimbot indicative per se, unless he wins the tournament, but I'm joking, of course, but yeah, just a silly clip. So this clip is very janky. The general jankiness on this one, I probably wouldn't have a problem with in isolation. But right here where Demon starts to go behind the Mohawk, his aim starts to stutter. Stutters right there, and then it stutters when he kills him. Stutter, and that's pretty suspicious. That's pretty wonky, but that stuff does happen. But once someone's gameplay is just consistently this all the time, especially on 360, and they're really accurate, it's getting pretty suspicious. So this is our first clip from Demon D. It's a pretty bad one. That's a very sharp kick out.
Amazingly as dominant as Trigger's down has looked in this game.
He also appears to target Hysteria through the wall at the end, but that part's not really relevant. So this is even worse when you slow it down, because he's zooming right in on Hysteria. There are no drop frames in this one either. I checked for that. He's zooming right in on Hysteria here, like directly at him. So there's really not any reason for him to be inputting much on the right thumbstick here. And yet, that happens. So, yeah.
Amazingly as dominant as Trigger's down has looked in this game.
That's a bad one. So that last clip was bad enough. We're going to put him on the list. Lemon P. So this clip is not that weird. It involves a short, sharp snap to center line. I used to wonder why the pros didn't swipe more with the sniper in Halo 3, because whenever I had host, it seemed to work pretty good, and I'm starting to see why. Maybe it worked differently on LAN, and those shots didn't really land, but that would surprise me. So this clip is not that bad. There's a gap in his shooting there. That's a little weird. But sometimes people... He's tracking TOTS, but he doesn't shoot at him right there. But sometimes people just fail to pull the trigger. Could be a reaction time thing. The shot on the ramp is getting close to extra shot territory, but not quite. And then he appears to snap two TOTS through the Mohawk at the end. Or pretty close. It's just sharp in a way. And it's pretty close, and it's a little bit ahead of him probably, which is something that we've talked about. And there's just something weird to me about how sharp the snap is, and then it just stays there for a second. Where he should know this aiming movement was going to be irrelevant, so why is there a delay on him doing the next thing? This clip is pretty bad. It's very janky again. It has another moving his aim in the wrong direction, snapping back to the target in it, and a sharp vertical chop at the end.
Staying alive, able to sneak out. Staying alive, able to sneak out of his base. Now he's going to double team with neighbor on snipe down.
This isn't frame drop. He just stops moving there. And then the shot on the guy on the ramp chops up and down pretty sharply. So this clip is pretty bad. This is from Pest Man. So he gets kicked out, but he recovers. His recovery goes right through the player's center line. So he actually recovers this right to the player at a really thin angle. And then right after his reticle gets to the player again, then it just goes to the right wonkily. Yeah, this is a bad clip. So you can see his reticle's off to the right immediately when he kicks out. See how it's off to the right? So this is a really thin angle to the vertical here. So this is a really hard adjustment to make perfectly with a 360 controller. But then he does that. Like the number of times that you would have to try this with a 360 controller to actually do it accurately would be surprising. And it's not just that. The kickout is not erratic. It goes up at one speed and then comes down at one speed. They might even be the same speeds. You see how weird that is? He kicks out and it's just consistent speed up, consistent speed back down. So Pest Man makes the list for that one. Pest Man. So this is our first clip from Tizoxic. This is another case of someone not knowing their left from their right.
He's top middle and he calls out to Tizoxic, you gotta help me, dude. He's top middle and he calls out to Tizoxic, you gotta help.
When he makes this movement to the right before he snaps accurately, Neighbor's actually been on the screen for almost a full second.
He's top middle and he calls out to Tizoxic, you gotta help me, dude. He's top middle and he calls out to Tizoxic, you gotta help me, dude.
This is the first clip from Tots. So this clip is not that bad, but there is a little back and forth that is a little suspicious on the last kill.
And here it is, guys. The BTH Bobby Tots on the flank, and here it is, guys. The BTH Bobby Tots on the flank, and here it is, guys.
But yeah, in isolation, not a big deal. But we'll see what happens. This clip is pretty weird. So first off, the acceleration with which his aim moves off target right there is pretty weird. It happens right as Toxic comes around the corner too. And then it has that weird chop in it. And then two little sharp movements at the end. More from Lemon P here. Obviously, this is a very fast movement and highly accelerated. And it happens just as his target moves behind the wall. This clip is not quite as bad as it could be because he's not kicked out of zoom, but he unzooms apparently on accident. But again, it happens at the exact same time, like practically to the frame that his target moves behind the wall. And there's still really no reason for him to be putting an input in there. So, yeah. This is our first clip from Snipefrown. He appears to track this player through the wall. After he can see the player, he appears to trap him with a series of short, sharp movements. If he was intending to pre-scope this, I mean, maybe he's got no shields, maybe he's running away from somebody. If he was intending to pre-scope this, he didn't really do it that well. And you can see as he turns the corner there, right as he zooms in, there's a really sharp movement to the right. He's turning the corner gradually, and then he zooms in, and there's a sharp movement to the right that seems to lock on for this player. That's a bad clip. So those last two were pretty bad. Let's update the list. We're going to move Lemon P up to Lock Cheater. And we're going to add our very own Snipefrown. So this clip is pretty bad. It's very janky to the point where I have a hard time believing that this player was going plus 23 in games where everyone else was stalemated. So
we have Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out the other winners bracket round 3. We have Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out the other winners bracket round. We have Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out. We have Scott and Chris out on the floor.
Just the way he's snapping on and off this player is ridiculous.
Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out the other winners bracket round 3. We have Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out the other winners bracket round. We have Scott and Chris out on the floor. They're going to be scouting out the other winners bracket.
Neighbor again. This clip is pretty bad. That's pretty wonky for that distance. It also seems like his aim was drawn to Snipefrown at first. And this was probably because he is tracking Snipefrown before he looks over the lip. He's tracking Snipe down to the right accurately. That's probably why his aim appears influenced by his location. Tizoxic again. In this clip, his aim is stuttering. That sharp little stutter in his aim is not natural. Tizoxic again. This is a bad clip. He appears to target this player through a wall. Then his aim goes really sharply off target and then back on target. Probably because the aimbot is programmed to do this so that this seems less obvious. He then also pulses a couple times towards the head. So he turns the corner, right on target. Goes off target, on target, and then pulses to the head. This clip wouldn't be that bad in isolation, but he does snap to somebody behind the wall once they go behind the wall. There's just something about how sharply it snaps right to where neighbor is there. And then it just stays there for a second. Like, he should already know that this is missing. So he should be doing something else. He shouldn't be waiting for this burst to land or something. That's probably what it is. The aimbot is waiting for this burst to land. Like, he's snapping this accurately behind the wall, but then he can't move his aim back to the opening. He goes completely past the opening after that. Not that any of this needs to be about aiming accuracy, it's just this sharp snap exactly to where players are is really, really common with this. This short, sharp back and forth movement on the kill shot is really common with this aimbot and not natural. That's the first video. Let's see where we ended up. So, Neighbor, Pest Man, and Snipefrown. We haven't seen much from them yet, but their clips were pretty bad. So we're going to move them to Lock Cheater. Snipefrown doesn't surprise me that much. I found his later montages to be a little suspicious. That's right around the time that I gave up on reviewing the old montages. Snipefrowns were really hard for me to decide on, and I was basically like, screw this. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And we're adding Toxic to the probable list. Not bad for only an hour and a half of gameplay. There's a lot of tournament gameplay. I wish I had better resolution videos. If anybody knows where to find those, please leave it in the comments. The nicer resolution would be really good for 2008. That stuff is all 360p, and it's pretty hard to tell what's going on a lot of times. But I'm pretty confident that even at that resolution, when we go over the gameplay together, you're going to see how much different it was in 2008 compared to 2010. Except for possibly a handful of cheaters. But the difference is stark, I can assure you. So yeah, a pretty surprising list. I was pretty shocked when I got around to doing this. I'm really disappointed that so many of these older big name players went ahead and started cheating also, instead of just going to MLG about this. Maybe MLG knew about it. Who knows? So yeah, that's it for now. Video 2 coming out pretty soon. Same tournament. Some pretty bad clips in there, I seem to remember. And after the second video, I'll probably do some of the 2008 gameplay. There was probably a few players cheating, but most of the gameplay seemed legit. So that would be a good opportunity for you guys to see what legit aim is supposed to be like in Halo 3. And then once we do that, and then you go back and start looking at 2010, it should become pretty obvious to you. So yeah, thanks for watching. If anybody knows how to contact anybody relevant in this community who actually gives a shit about this, and that isn't Snipefrown, please do. And I'll see you next time.